Hey everyone, welcome back to Autobooks. Today in this video, we will continue our next chapters from the book Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. In our last video, we have completed the up to chapter 11 of the book. Today, we will continue from chapter 12 and let's see how much we can read it. So, without any kind of time waste, let's just dive into the world of networking. Chapter 12, Share Your Passion. I have a confession to make. I've never been to a so-called networking event in my life. If properly organized, these get-togethers in theory could work. Most, however, are for the desperate and uninformed. The average attendees are often unemployed and too quick to pass on their resumes to anyone with a free hand, usually the hand of someone else who is unemployed looking to pass on his resume. Imagine a congregation of people with nothing in common except joblessness. That's not exactly a recipe for facilitating close bonds. When it comes to meeting people, it's not only whom you get to know, but also how and where you get to know them. For example, take the first class section on an airplane. Flying first class is not something most people can afford, but there's an interesting camaraderie among those front seats that you won't find back in coach. To begin with, there are always a number of movers and shakers up front, in close quarters, for hours at a time. Because they've slapped down an absurd premium for the luxury of getting off the plane a few seconds earlier than the rest of the passengers, fellow first classers assume you, too, are important, and they often seek to quench their curiosity about who you are and why you're as dumb as they are to pay such an inflated price. I can't tell you how many valuable clients and contacts I've met during a conversation struck up during an in-flight meal. At a so-called networking event, the dynamics are just the opposite. People assume you're in the same boat they are, desperate. Credibility is hard to gain. If you're jobless, doesn't it make more sense to hang with the job givers than fellow job seekers? There are better ways and better places to spend your time. Shared interests are the basic building blocks of any relationship. Race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or business. Professional and personal interests are relational glue. It makes sense, then, that events and activities where you'll thrive are those built around interests you're most passionate about. Friendship is created out of the quality of time spent between two people, not the quantity. There is a misconception that to build a bond, two people need to spend a great deal of time together. This is not the case. Outside your family and work, you probably can count the people you see a great deal of in the course of a month on two hands. Yet, surely, you have more than 10 friends. It is what you do together that matters, not how often you meet. That's why you have to pay special attention to where you're most comfortable and what activities you most enjoy. Usually, it's the events and activities you excel at that you're most passionate about. So it makes sense to make these the focus of your efforts. For me, my love of food and exercise has led to the most amazing get-togethers. For others, it may be stamps, baseball cards, politics, or skydiving that brings you together. The power of shared passion in bringing people together can be seen today in the rising trend of blogs or weblogs. Blogs are online journals, usually dedicated to an individual's interests, containing commentary and links to relevant news and information. Popular blogs attract like-minded legions to their sites. The blogosphere has grown from a dozen or so weblogs in 1999 to an estimated 5 million today. When they write the history of the 2004 presidential campaign, an entire chapter could be dedicated to blogs. No other innovation in the last 20 years has influenced electoral politics quite like these impassioned online communities. They've galvanized an unprecedented number of voters into action, raised millions, and given people an outlet to participate in the political process. It's amazing to think that one person, writing about what or whom they love, could have so much influence or create a community of people so quickly. When we are truly passionate about something, it's contagious. Our passion draws other people to who we are and what we care about. Others respond by letting their guard down, which is why sharing your passion is important in business. I can tell more about how someone is likely to react in a business situation from my experience with them at an intimate dinner or after just one strenuous workout than I can from any number of in office meetings. We just naturally loosen up outside the office. Or perhaps it's the venue itself, not to mention the wine over dinner. It's astonishing how much more you can learn about someone when you are both doing something you enjoy. I have a friend who is the executive vice president of a large bank in Charlotte. His networking hotspot is, of all places, the YMCA. He tells me that at 5 and 6 in the morning, the place is buzzing with exercise fanatics like himself, getting in a workout before they go to the office. He scouts the place for entrepreneurs, current customers, and prospects. Then, as he's huffing and puffing on the Stairmaster, he answers their questions about investments and loans. Besides food and exercise, I sometimes take people to church. That's right, church. I attend a mostly African American and Hispanic Catholic church in Los Angeles, St. Agatha's. It's wonderfully unorthodox. Instead of passing the peace in the form of a simple handshake, a gospel choir belts out uplifting tunes while the congregants walk around the church hugging each other for 10 minutes. It's an amazing scene. I don't try to foist my beliefs on anyone. The people I bring along, whether an actor or lawyer or an atheist or Orthodox Jew, tend to see my invitation as a kind of personalized gift. It shows them that I think so highly of them that I'm willing to share such a deeply personal part of my life. Contrary to popular business wisdom, I don't believe there has to be a rigid line between our private and public lives. Old school business views the expression of emotions and compassion as vulnerability. Today's new business people see such attributes as the glue that binds us. When our relationships are stronger, our businesses and careers are more successful. Take Bonnie Degrius, a consultant who used to work at the Gartner Group. Bonnie sends her list of contacts and associates an annual newsletter that is, well, all about her. She writes of the new and exciting things she's working on, or about her family. She wrote about how the death of her father changed her life. You might think those who received this letter were uncomfortable with such a public display of emotion. Just the opposite. More and more people, men, women, colleagues, and strangers alike, asked to receive Bonnie's letter. They'd write her back and tell her of similar experiences they'd been through. After a few years, Bonnie had a network that stretched across the nation. She's poured her heart and passion onto the page, and, because of it, she's received the trust and admiration of hundreds in return. Make a list of the things you're most passionate about. Use your passions as a guide to which activities and events you should be seeking out. Use them to engage new and old contacts. If you love baseball, for example, take potential and current clients to a ball game. Your passions and the events you build around them will create deeper levels of intimacy. Pay attention to matching the event to the particular relationship you're trying to build. I've got an informal list of activities I use to keep in touch with my business and personal friends. Here are some things I like to do. 1. 15 minutes and a cup of coffee. It's quick, it's out of the office, and it's a great way to meet someone new. 2. Conferences. If I'm attending a conference in, say, Seattle, I'll pull out a list of people in the area I know or would like to know better and see if they might like to drop in for a particularly interesting keynote speech or dinner. 3. Invite someone to share a workout or a hobby. 4. A quick early breakfast, lunch, drinks after work, or dinner together. There's nothing like food to break the ice. 5. Invite someone to a special event. For me, a special event such as the theater, a book signing party, or a concert is made even more special if I bring along a few people who I think might particularly enjoy the occasion. 6. Entertaining at home. I view dinner parties at home as sacred. I like to make these events as intimate as possible. To ensure they stay that way, I generally will invite only 1 or 2 people I don't know that well. By dinner's end, I want those people leaving my home feeling as if they've made a whole new set of friends, and that's hard to do if it's a dinner filled with strangers. Of course, we all need to schedule the appropriate time with friends and family as well, or just to read or relax. While enriching your life to include others whenever and wherever you can, make sure you're not neglecting the key relationships in your life. When your day is fueled by passion, filled with interesting people to share it with, Reaching out will seem less like a challenge or a chore and more like an effortless consequence of the way you work. Chapter 13: Follow Up or Fail. How often do you find yourself standing face to face with someone you've met before, but you can't recall their name? We live in a fast paced digital world that bombards us with information. Our inboxes are a constant procession of new and old names demanding our attention. Our brains are in constant overdrive trying to keep track of all the bits and bytes and names that cross our desk each and every day. It's natural that to stay sane, we must forget or ignore most of the data, clamoring for a sliver of real estate in our already overcrowded noggins. In such a world, it's incomprehensible that only a small percentage of us decide to follow up once we've met someone new. I can't say this strongly enough. When you meet someone with whom you want to establish a relationship, take the extra little step to ensure you won't be lost in their mental attic. Just recently, I was down in Florida giving a speech at an awards ceremony for past and present members of my college fraternity, Sigma Chi. I probably gave my card and email address out to at least 100 people that night. After the black tie affair had ended, I retreated to my hotel in the wee hours of the morning and checked my email. There, in my inbox, was a simple, gracious note from a young fraternity brother expressing his thanks for the speech, what it meant to him as someone who came from a similar background, and his hopes that someday he and I might sit down for a cup of coffee. Within the next 2 weeks, well over 100 people emailed or called to express similar sentiments. The follow up I remember best is the one I got first. The most memorable gifts I have ever received are those whose value could not be measured in terms of dollars and cents. They are the heartfelt letters, emails, and cards I receive from people thanking me for guidance and advice. Do you want to stand out from the crowd? Then you'll be miles ahead by following up better and smarter than the hordes scrambling for the person's attention. The fact is, most people don't follow up very well, if at all. Good follow up alone elevates you above 95% of your peers. The follow up is the hammer and nails of your networking toolkit. In fact, follow up is the key to success in any field. Making sure a new acquaintance retains your name and the favorable impression you've created is a process you should set in motion right after you've met someone. Give yourself between 12 and 24 hours after you meet someone to follow up. If you meet somebody on a plane, send them an email later that day. If you meet somebody over cocktails, again, send them an email the next morning. For random encounters and chance meetings, email is a fine tool for dropping a quick note to say, "It was a pleasure meeting you. We must keep in touch." In such an email, I like to cite something particular we talked about in the course of our conversation, whether a shared hobby or business interest, that serves as a mental reminder of who I am. When I leave the meeting, I put the name and email address of the new acquaintance in my database and program my PDA or BlackBerry to remind me in a month's time to drop the person another email, just to keep in touch. Why go to all the trouble of meeting new people if you're not going to work on making them a part of your life? In the aftermath of a business meeting, I've taken to doing something my classmate at HBS and former COO James Clark swears by. In his follow up, he always reiterates the commitments everyone has made and asks when a second follow up meeting can be arranged. When the other person has agreed to do something, whether it's meeting for coffee next time you're in town or signing a major deal, try to get it in writing. It shouldn't be formulaic or ironclad, just something such as, "It was great talking to you over lunch yesterday. I wanted to follow up with some thoughts we discussed yesterday. I believe Farazi Greenlight can serve the interests of your company, and I've had time to work out the finer details. The next time I'm in town, I'd love to get on your calendar and chat for 5 or 10 minutes." 9 times out of 10, the person will casually write back accepting your offer to meet again. Then, when the time comes to take that person up on his offer to talk again, you can call him with the force of his email commitment in writing behind you. He's already agreed to meet. Now the question is when, and your persistence will assure that happens at some point. But remember, and this is critical, don't remind them of what they can do for you, but focus on what you might be able to do for them. It's about giving them a reason to want to follow up. Another effective way to follow up is to clip relevant articles and send them to the people in your network who might be interested. When people do this for me, I'm tremendously appreciative. It shows they're thinking about me and the issues I'm facing. While email is one perfectly acceptable way to follow up, there are other methods to consider. A handwritten thank you note these days can particularly capture a person's attention. When's the last time you received a handwritten letter? When you get something addressed to you personally, you open it. The thank you note is an opportunity to reinforce a perception of continuity in a relationship and create an aura of goodwill. Mention any pertinent information you failed to bring up in your meeting. Emphasize both your desire to meet again and your offer to help. Here are a few more reminders of what to include in your follow-ups. Always express your gratitude. Be sure to include an item of interest from your meeting or conversation, a joke or a shared moment of humor. Reaffirm whatever commitments you both made, going both ways. Be brief and to the point. Always address the thank you note to the person by name. Use email and snail mail. The combination adds a personalized touch. Timeliness is key. Send them as soon as possible after the meeting or interview. Many people wait until the holidays to say thank you or reach out. Why wait? Your follow-ups will be timelier, more appropriate, and certainly better remembered. Don't forget to follow up with those who have acted as the go-between for you and someone else. Let the original referrer know how the conversation went and express your appreciation for their help. Make follow-up a habit. Make it automatic. When you do, the days of struggling to remember people's names and of other people struggling to remember yours will be a thing of the past. Chapter 14. Be a conference commando. Military strategists know that most battles are won before the first shot is fired by the side that determines where, when, and how an engagement is fought. And so it is with most successful conferences. Turning a conference into your own turf and setting goals ahead of time is what turns a casual conference attendance into a mission. Don't just be an attendee, be a conference commando. Conferences are good for mainly one thing. No, it's not the coffee and cookies at breaks. It's not even pricey business enlightenment. They provide a forum to meet the kind of like-minded people who can help you fulfill your mission and goals. Before deciding to attend a conference, I sometimes informally go so far as using a simple return on investment type thought process. Is the likely return I'll get from the relationships I establish and build equal to or greater than the price of the conference and the time I spend there? If so, I attend. If not, I don't. It's that simple. That may seem like an awfully pragmatic view of conferences, but it works. Right after we sold Yaya, the new owners instituted a set of cost-cutting policies relative to travel and conferences. I thought the policies were fundamentally off the mark. The owners saw conferences as boondoggles, pleasant affairs for indulgent executives, rather than as revenue generators. To our new parent company, the costs of sending people to a few events each year seemed like an unnecessary expense on a startup company's balance sheet. I strongly disagreed and promised to convince them otherwise. I set about recording the actual number of revenue-generating projects that came directly from people I had met at conferences. The owners were stunned when I presented a spreadsheet showing successive deals and how a significant chunk of revenue could be traced back to one conference or another. Their ill-tempered disposition toward these business get-togethers, and these executives are far from alone in holding such attitudes, stems from an all-too-common misperception that conferences are places to find insight. Wrong. Real, actionable insight mostly comes from experience, books, and other people. Roundtable discussions and keynote speeches can be fun, even inspirational, but rarely is there the time to impart true knowledge. But there may be no better place to extend your professional network and, on occasion, get deals done. Let me give you an example based on sales. In the old model of selling, 80% of a salesperson's time went into setting up meetings, giving a presentation, and trying to close a deal. The other 20% was spent developing a relationship with the customer. Today, we focus mostly on relationship selling. Smart salespeople, in fact, smart employees and business owners of all stripes, spend 80% of their time building strong relationships with the people they do business with. The slickest PowerPoint presentation can't compete with the development of real affection and trust in capturing the hearts and minds of other people. Those who use conferences properly have a huge leg up at your average industry gathering. While others quietly sit taking notes, content to sip their free bottled water, these men and women are setting up one-on-one meetings, organizing dinners, and, in general, making each conference an opportunity to meet people who could change their lives. If these people seem as if they aren't playing by the same rules as their fellow attendees, you're right. They've gone well beyond the traditional warmed-over advice to wear your badge, warmly greet everyone, establish firm eye contact, and other common refrains that fail to distinguish them from the rest of the horde. Yes, there's a guide to getting the most out of a conference. My friend Paul Reddy, a software executive, claims people are either bowling balls or pins at a conference. If you're the ball, you walk or roll into a conference, event, or an organization, and you blow it apart. With a dash of bravado and ingenuity, you leave a positive impression in your wake, create friendships, and achieve the goals on your agenda. The pins sit placidly by, waiting for something, anything, to happen to them. Don't think of your next conference as a business-related retreat. Think of it as a well-coordinated campaign to further your mission. Here are the rules I follow at each and every event I attend. Help the organizer. Better yet, be the organizer. Conferences are logistical nightmares. There are 1,000 different things that go into pulling off a successful business gathering. The mess that can ensue is an opportunity for you to come in and help out and become an insider in the process. Once you're on the inside, you can find out who will be attending and what the hot events will be. And you'll find yourself at all those unlisted dinners and cocktail parties that are thrown for the conference poobahs. How do you find yourself part of the process? It's not really all that hard. First, review the event's materials, visit its website, and find out who the main contact is for putting together the conference. Put in a phone call. The person responsible for these kinds of events is generally overworked and stressed out. I like to call these people a few months ahead of the event and say, "I'm really looking forward to the conference you're putting together. I'm interested in helping make this year be the best year ever, and I'm willing to devote a chunk of my resources, be it time, creativity, or connections, to make this year's event a smash hit. How can I help?" I guarantee the coordinator will be shocked with delight. I say that because I was once responsible for those stressed-out planners back in my early days as CMO of Deloitte. Deloitte Consulting was working with Michael Hammer to grow a credible re-engineering practice. We thought a conference might be a great way to introduce our relationship with Michael to the market, strengthen our brand, and win a few customers to boot. So we proposed a joint conference hosted by Deloitte and Michael Hammer. We would bring the industry expertise and case studies, and Michael would bring his expertise in re-engineering and his understanding of how to run a world-class conference. It gave me a chance to see the inner workings of how a successful conference is orchestrated, and of course, build a great relationship with Mike. I became acutely aware of how powerful it was to know in advance who would be attending, why some speakers were chosen and some were not, and what the best forums were for networking. From the outset, our idea was to apply some method to the usual conference madness. A tracking system was put in place that recorded daily our progress against the objectives we set for ourselves. Each Deloitte partner's objective was to meet 2 people who were assigned to them from the guests we knew would be attending. Each was given 1 person as a primary target, someone we really wanted to win as a client. The other person was someone we thought Deloitte would benefit from knowing, perhaps a member of the media. The basic goal remained, quite simply, to meet new people. Because we knew who was attending beforehand, the partners got a 1-page bio on the people assigned them, listing who they were, what they did, their accomplishments and hobbies, and the potential challenges their company faced that Deloitte might be able to address. This was enough information to make a real connection when the partner finally met the individual. We also gave the partners a list of ideas of how to actually catch up with their targets and what to say when they met them. At the end of each day, the partners would report whom they met, where, and how the encounter went. If someone had a difficult time meeting their target person, we strategized for the next day, making sure that the partner and the individual they were assigned to would sit at the same dinner table the following evening. Or I'd make a point of making the introduction myself, or we'd ask Mike to make an intro in a few cases. What I had unknowingly created was a unit of conference commandos, prepared in advance with information on who they were to meet, how, we had done research, and where. The results were astounding. The conference was packed. As a result, Deloitte saw an unprecedented amount of business come its way. We have since perfected this art at Farazi Greenlight, and not only do we advise companies on how to get the most out of their conferences, but also big conference givers like Forbes and PeopleSoft come to us to help them design conferences that will have world-class outcomes for both these companies and their conference attendees. The key is to work hard to make the conference a success for everyone. At the Hammer Conference, all attendees almost across the board were shocked by how much business they got done. The right environment was set for networking success. Of course, Michael Hammer was brilliant, as always, and there was much for all of us to learn from him on content. But everyone's success came from organizing a conference around its real function, an intimate gathering of like-minded professionals in an atmosphere that facilitates profitable relationships. Listen, better yet, speak. Are you someone who thinks becoming a speaker is a big deal? That's true for a lot of people. I'm here to tell you it's not as tough as you might think, but it is also perhaps more important than you can imagine. Nothing frightens the daylights out of some people like the thought of spending 15 minutes talking about what they do in front of an audience. Even if the audience is made up of generally receptive folks, like family and friends. Calm yourself. First, you should know that giving speeches is one of the easiest and most effective ways to get yourself, your business, and your ideas seen, heard of, and remembered. And you don't need to be Tony Robbins to find yourself a forum of people willing to hear you out. How many people find themselves in front of an audience on any given day? The numbers are shocking. There are thousands of forums and events going on for every imaginable reason, each and every day. All these forums need a warm body to say something the slightest bit inspiring or insightful to their guests. Most speakers, unfortunately, deliver neither. If you think the people delivering this insight are only those at the top of their respective fields, you're mistaken. So how do you get experience? Toastmasters International, for instance, provides a forum for the development of speaking skills. With more than 8,000 clubs meeting weekly in groups of up to 30 or 40 people, there are a whole lot of speeches and speakers being made. On a larger scale, the national speaker circuit is huge. The American Society of Association Executives, ASAE, says the meetings industry is a nearly $83 billion market, with over $56 billion being spent annually on conventions and seminars alone. That ranks conferences, get this, as the 23rd largest contributor to the gross national product. The point here is that the opportunity to speak exists everywhere, paid or unpaid. It's fun, it can be profitable, and there's no better way to get yourself known and get to know others at an event. Study after study shows that the more speeches one gives, the higher one's income bracket tends to be. As a speaker at a conference, you have a special status, making meeting people much easier. Attendees expect you to reach out and greet them. They, in turn, give you respect that they don't accord their fellow attendees. Instant credibility and faux fame is bestowed upon you when you're on a stage, and pretty much any stage at that. How do you become a speaker at a conference? First, you need something to say. You need content, which I'll discuss in another chapter. You need to develop a spiel about the niche you occupy. In fact, you can develop a number of different spiels, catering to a number of different audiences. Again, I'll get to that later. If you take the first step and get to know the organizer, landing a speaking gig isn't that tough. In the beginning, it's best to start small. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine left his big firm years ago to start his own consulting business. He needed to establish himself as an expert in the field of branding, and while he was terrified of public speaking, he knew it would be the best way to interact with potential customers and hone his message. He started small, getting to know all the organizers of small, local, industry specific events. He would ask these people, in return for his help, to give him a room during an off hour at the end of the event so he could speak to a small gathering of people that he would organize. Initially, he wasn't even listed on the conference agenda. He'd meet people throughout the conference and tell them that he was organizing an intimate gathering of professionals interested in talking about their branding issues. The informal atmosphere allowed him to deliver his content without the pressure of a big audience, while at the same time getting valuable feedback from the people that attended. In short order, the rooms he spoke at started getting bigger. His speeches became more refined, and the audience went from intimate to intimidating, though by then he had worked through most of his fears. What if you are at a conference and you're not a speaker? There are other places to distinguish yourself. Remember, you're not there just to learn new things from other people. You're there to meet others and have others meet and remember you. When sessions open up for questions, try and be among the first people to put your hand in the air. A really well-formed and insightful question is a mini opportunity to get seen by the entire audience. Be sure to introduce yourself. Tell people what company you work for, what you do, and then ask a question that leaves the audience buzzing. Ideally, the question should be related to your expertise, so you have something to say when someone comes up and says, "That was an interesting question." Guerrilla warfare. Organize a conference. Within a conference. True commandos aren't restricted by the agenda that they receive at registration. Who says you can't arrange your own dinner while at the conference, or put together an informal discussion on a particular topic that matters to you? The dinners at your average event are often a total mess. People's attention is scattershot. Everyone is trying to rise above the noise and be polite and engaged with 10 different strangers. Listen to a keynote address and get a few mouthfuls of mediocre food all at the same time. Make for a good setting for conversation. At times like these, I've been tempted to go back to my room, order room service, and spend the rest of the night in front of my laptop. That, however, would be a terrible lost opportunity. The alternative is to commandeer the useless hour or two by throwing a dinner of your own. I like to do this at least once during most conferences. Before the event, I'll scout out a nice nearby restaurant and send out pre-invites to a private dinner that I'll host alongside the scheduled affair. You can do this ad hoc during the day, or you can send out official invites beforehand. One way I've had big success is sending a fax to the hotel that the individuals get when they arrive the night before the conference, asking them to join a group for dinner or drinks that night. Think about it. No secretaries to screen the message. Likely those people have no plans when they arrive, and even if they do, you will already stand out when you ultimately meet them during the conference. And I assure you, they will be grateful for your having thought of them. If the keynote address is being given by someone particularly interesting, I'll turn my own affair into pre- or post-dinner drinks. Often, creating your own forum is the best way to assure that people you're looking to meet will be in the same place at the same time. Ideally, you'd like to invite a stable of speakers to your dinner, which will provide a star-studded draw to your little event. Remember, even an unknown becomes a mini-star after their talk at an event. I do this each year at Renaissance Weekend, an annual New Year's weekend gathering for politicians, business people, and other professionals. I send out a funny invite asking a few people if they'd like to play hooky from an official dinner and go to a nice restaurant elsewhere. At Renaissance Weekend, they even have a night designed for going off on your own to do just this. This works best at long 3-day conferences. As with college, everyone likes to get off campus. If the conference is in your hometown, be bold enough to invite people to your home for a real treat, as I have always done with the Los Angeles-based Milken Global Conference. This conference is one of the best in the United States for both content and guests. Each year, I hold a dinner party at my house the day before the event is set to begin. People generally arrive in town a day early anyway, and a fun, intimate dinner party is always preferable to eating hotel food alone. Dinner is not the only way to organize a conference within a conference. Long conferences are often filled with social outings, golf, tours, and visits to historic sites. Too often, such events are just plain terrible. Have you ever gone to a museum in a crowd of 400 people? You feel like a herded cow. There's no reason why you can't take the lead in developing your own personal tour or visit to an out-of-the-way place that convention organizers might not have thought about. An old colleague from Starwood used to do this at winter conferences. An avid skier, he'd research the best skiing in the area, usually some out-of-the-way slopes that no one had taken the time to discover. He'd have no problem attracting a few other skiers who were jazzed about the prospect of some fresh powder. The more active you become in playing host of your own conference within a conference, the better you'll be at helping other people make connections, making you a center of influence. When you meet people at your dinner party or event, don't simply introduce yourself. Introduce the folks you meet to other people. If your new acquaintances don't quickly take up the conversation, offer a fact about one guest to another. Sergio was in charge of Coke's global branding efforts in their heyday. Aren't you looking to refurbish your company's brand, David? You couldn't find a better sounding board than Sergio. Draft off a big kahuna. If you get to know the most popular man or woman at the conference, the one who knows everyone, you'll be able to hang with them as they circle through the most important people at the conference. Conference organizers, speakers, and name brand CEOs and professionals attending the event are all worthy kahunas. Check the convention program for the names of luminaries and key figures. Make those the sessions you attend. Arrive early at events where they'll be speaking. Stand near key entrances or registration tables. Be ready to introduce yourself or stay behind for a quick chance to meet them. You must remember to talk with speakers before they've hit the stage. Often, that anonymous schlub slurping yogurt at the breakfast table will take on the aura of a celebrity after he's spoken on stage. Find them before they've gained celebrity status, and you have a better chance to connect. Or ask the conference organizer to point them out if you don't know what they look like. Be an information hub. Once you've created an opportunity to meet new people, establish yourself as an information hub, a key role of any good networker. How? Go beyond just memorizing the conference's brochure. Identify information the people around you would like to know, and come prepared. This might include information about trade gossip, the best local restaurants, private parties, etc. Pass key information along or let others know how they can obtain it. This role does not end with the networking event, of course. As an information resource, you're someone always worth knowing. Master the deep bump. The bump is the main weapon in your conference commando arsenal. Reduced to its essence, it is the 2 minutes you're given with someone you're bumping into whom you are looking to meet. Your goal should be to leave the encounter with an invitation to reconnect at a later time. The bump, like other practices, is nuanced. The perfect bump is one that feels both fast and meaningful at the same time. I call this ideal a deep bump. Deep bumps are an effort to quickly make contact, establish enough of a connection to secure the next meeting, and move on. You've just paid a boatload of money to be at this conference, and you want to meet as many people as you can in the time that you have. You're not looking to make a best friend. You are looking, however, to make enough of a connection to secure a follow-up. Creating a connection between any two people necessitates a certain level of intimacy. In 2 minutes, you need to look deeply into the other person's eyes and heart, listen intently, ask questions that go beyond just business, and reveal a little about yourself in a way that introduces some vulnerability. Yes, vulnerability, it's contagious, into the interaction. All these things come together to create a genuine connection. Not possible, you exclaim. Ah, but I've seen it done, and I do it. The deep bump is not just theoretical mumbo-jumbo. There are some people who need just seconds, rather than minutes, to pull off a deep bump. Former President Bill Clinton, for instance, is the master. I've watched him up close as he works a line of well-wishers and fans, and sometimes strident opponents. With each person, President Clinton will reach out to shake his or her hand. Most of the time, he'll use two hands or clasp a person's elbow to create instantaneous warmth. He'll make direct contact and, in that fleeting moment, ask a personal question or two. I don't know how many times I've heard different people from the same event comment about how incredible it was to be the sole focus of the man's attention. And that's even the Republicans. The profoundness of that connection doesn't come from the president's desire to impart his opinion or riff on policy. His goal is at once very simple and powerful. The president wants you to like him. When he shows in those brief moments that he likes and cares about you, the human response is to reciprocate. He is finally tuned in to the radio station that we each listen to, WIFM, also known as What's in It for Me. I never once heard Clinton ask for a vote or talk about himself when engaged in these quick, casual encounters. His questions always revolved around what the other person was thinking, what was troubling them. Most people think a conference is a good time to market their wares. They rush from room to room desperately trying to sell themselves. But a commando knows that you have to get people to like you first. The sales come later, in the follow-up discussions you have after the conference. Now is the time to begin to build trust and a relationship. Know your targets. You're ready to bump. Now you just need someone to bump against. At each conference, I keep a list of 3 or 4 people I'd most like to meet on a folded piece of paper in my jacket pocket. I check off each person as I meet them. Beside their name, I'll jot down what we talked about and make a note about how I'm going to contact them later. And once you've met with and engaged someone, you find yourself chatting again and again throughout the conference. You can't, however, rely solely on chance to find them at cocktails or on a break. I usually ask the conference organizer to point to the area where they'll be, and I watch where they sit. Most people continue to sit in the same seats throughout the conference. For example, Barry Diller, the CEO of Interactive Corp., was someone I'd wanted to meet for years. He's a visionary in commerce and media with an uncanny ability to foresee before anyone else, where innovation will turn into profit. He smells money. Researching one of my conferences, I noticed he was scheduled to speak. I found out when and where, and got access to the area where he would have to get on and off the stage. I positioned myself in a place where it would be damn near impossible to get by without giving me a little nudge. As he walked by, I got his attention. Mr. Diller, my name is Keith Ferrazzi. I work for Barry Sternlicht as his CMO at Starwood. He's mentioned before that you and I should talk, and I thought I'd just make the introduction myself. I know you're busy, but I'm wondering if I can call your office and arrange a time to meet with you when we get back home. Pause. To which he responded, sure, call my New York office. Great, I wanted to talk to you about a number of ideas I have about your business, but I've also admired your career and pioneering work you've done for a long time. That was it. I played my heaviest and hardest card, which was my boss, a fellow visionary entrepreneur for whom Diller held respect. With a name as big as Diller, sometimes the bump can't be as deep as you'd like. Still, with limited time, I managed to gain credibility by dropping a familiar and trusted name, show a bit of vulnerability in admitting I admired his career, and suggested I had value to offer with my ideas. That bump went on to realize a job offer and introductions within his company that are now important clients for Ferrazzi Greenlight. Your soundbite introduction will change depending on the circumstances. Generally, it will be a 2 or 3 sentence opener, tailored to the event, about what you can or want to do for them. Breaks are no time to take a break. Breaks are where the real work happens at a conference. Make sure and stake out the right place. Have you ever noticed how guests gather in the kitchen or some other central place when you have gatherings at home? One warm and centrally located spot is often the center of any party. The same holds true at a business gathering. Determine where most people will gather, or at least pass, and station yourself there. This might be near the food table, the bar, or the reception area. Be on your game during these times. U.S. News & World Report revealed Henry Kissinger's technique for commanding a room. Enter the room. Step to the right. Survey the room. See who is there. You want other people to see you. Kissinger knows that great networkers know how to make a memorable first impression. They see a room of people as a playing field. Remember to look sharp. Don't underestimate the importance of dressing well in places where you'll be noticed. And start bumping. Follow up. If you didn't think I was a nut before, now it's a certainty. I know I've told you to follow up already, but that's how vitally important I think it is. So here it is again. Follow up. After that, follow up again. Then, after you've done that, follow up once more. I don't like to put it off, or it might not get done. How many of you have cards from events that occurred months ago or even longer? That's a lost opportunity. During speeches, I'll sit in the back and write follow-up emails to the people I just met at the previous break. Everyone you talked with at the conference needs to get an email reminding them of their commitment to talk again. I also like sending a note to the speakers, even if I didn't get a chance to meet them. Here's an actual example of one of my follow-up emails. Hey Carla, wow, what a fun time. I didn't expect tequila shots to be a part of the Forbes CIO conference. We definitely have to make this an annual occurrence. Hey, I also wanted to follow up with our discussion on your marketing strategy and your interest in the Farazi Greenlight loyalty strategy, work we've done as a way to help reach your adult women demographic. When can you do a call this week? Or at your leisure. Also, I wanted to say that I heard no fewer than 3 separate people talk about your session and what a great speaker you were. Congrats. Best, Keith, it's the people, not the speakers. You've probably already figured this rule out by now. I don't often find the content of conferences particularly useful. I read a lot. I think about these subjects constantly and talk to a lot of people. By the time I get to a conference, I know the substance of what's going to be said. Of course, there are exceptions, like when Michael Hammer talked about re-engineering and then would magically turn the talk into both a lesson in life and a stand-up comedy routine. Epiphanies aside, most conference speeches are about one more IBM or Microsoft senior VP talking about his or her process improvement project. Even when the speaker is interesting, the mentality is the same. It's always about the people. Don't be this person. The wallflower, the limp handshake, the position in the far corner of the room, the unassuming demeanor, all signs that this person thinks he or she is there to watch the speakers. The ankle hugger. The ankle hugger is a total codependent and thinks that the first person they meet is their BFF. Out of fear, they shadow their BFF the entire conference. You've spent too much money not to leverage the opportunity to meet many different people. So bump. You have a lifetime to build relationships with these people. Collect as many follow-ups as you can. The celebrity hound. This type of person funnels every bit of their energy into trying to meet the most important person at the event. The problem is, if the person they want to meet truly is the most important person at the conference, that person will be on their guard, and maybe even guarded, literally. A young friend of mine went to see the King of Jordan speak recently and came back ecstatic. He had waited an hour or more, along with 500 other people, for a chance to shake the king's hand. I asked him, "How exactly did you benefit from that encounter?" "I can say I met him," he sheepishly replied. I told him that there were probably at least a handful of dignitaries and members of the king's cabinet in that room whom no one knew or wanted to know. Wouldn't it have been better for my young friend to actually have had a conversation with one of them, instead of a handshake with someone who will not remember him beyond the handshake? Maybe he could have struck up a relationship. Instead, he got a photo and a handshake. The smarmy eye darter. Nothing will give you a bad rap in less time. Be Bill Clinton instead. If you spend only 30 seconds with someone, make it 30 seconds of warmth and sincerity. Nothing will give you a good rap in less time. The card dispenser amasser. This guy passes his card out like it had the cure for cancer written on its back. Frankly, cards are overrated. If you perform the bump successfully and extract a promise for a future meeting, a piece of paper is irrelevant. This person gloats over the number of contacts he's made. In reality, he's created nothing more valuable than a phone book. Chapter 15. Connecting with Connectors. It has become part of our accepted wisdom that 6 degrees is all that separates us from anyone else in the world. How can that be? Because some of those degrees know many, many more people than the rest of us. Call them superconnectors. We all know at least one person like this individual who seems to know everybody and who everybody seems to know. You'll find a disproportionate amount of superconnectors as headhunters, lobbyists, fundraisers, politicians, journalists, and public relations specialists, because such positions require these folks' innate abilities. I'm going to argue that such people should be the cornerstones to any flourishing network. What Michael Jordan was to the basketball court, or Tiger Woods is to golf, these people can be to your network. So who are they really? And get them to become prized members of your circle of associates and friends. In his best-selling book, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell cites a classic 1974 study by sociologist Mark Granovetter that surveyed how a group of men in Newton, Massachusetts found their current job. The study, appropriately titled Getting a Job, has become a seminal work in its field, and its findings have been confirmed over and over again. Granovetter discovered that 56% of those surveyed found their current job through a personal connection. Only 19% used what we consider traditional job searching routes, like newspaper job listings and executive recruiters. Roughly 10% applied directly to an employer and obtained the job. My point? Personal contacts are the key to opening doors, not such a revolutionary idea. What is surprising, however, is that of those personal connections that reap dividends for those in the study, only 17% saw their personal contact often, as much as they would if they were good friends. And 55% saw their contact only occasionally. And get this, 28% barely met with their contact at all. In other words, it's not necessarily strong contacts, like family and close friends, that prove the most powerful. To the contrary, often the most important people in our network are those who are acquaintances. As a result of the study, Granovetter immortalized the phrase, the strength of weak ties, by showing persuasively that when it comes to finding out about new jobs, or for that matter, new information or new ideas, weak ties are generally more important than those you consider strong. Why is that? Think about it. Many of your closest friends and contacts go to the same parties, generally do the same work, and exist in roughly the same world as you do. That's why they seldom know information that you don't already know. Your weak ties, on the other hand, generally occupy a very different world than you do. They're hanging out with different people, often in different worlds, with access to a whole inventory of knowledge and information unavailable to you and your close friends. Mom was wrong. It does pay to talk to strangers. As Malcolm Gladwell wrote, acquaintances, in short, represent a source of social power, and the more acquaintances you have, the more powerful you are. Throughout this book, I try to emphasize that what's most important is developing deep and trusting relationships, not superficial contacts. Despite Granovetter's research, I believe friendships are the foundation for a truly powerful network. For most of us, cultivating a lengthy list of mere acquaintances, on top of the effort devoted to your circle of friends, is just too draining. The thought of being obligated to another 100 or so people, sending birthday cards, dinner invites, and all that stuff that we do for those close to us, seems outlandishly taxing. Only for some, it's not. These people are super connectors, people like me who maintain contact with thousands of people. The key, however, is not only that we know thousands of people, but that we know thousands of people in many different worlds, and we know them well enough to give them a call. Once you become friendly with a superconnector, you're only 2 degrees away from the thousands of different people we know. A social psychologist by the name of Dr. Stanley Milgram proved this idea in a 1967 study. He ran an experiment that set out to show that our big impersonal world is actually quite small and friendly. It was Milgram's experiment that created the notion of 6 degrees of separation. In the experiment, he sent a package to a few hundred randomly selected people in Nebraska with the instructions that they forward the package to an anonymous stockbroker in Boston whom they did not know. Each person could send the packet only to someone whom they knew on a first-name basis and who they thought was more likely to know the stockbroker than they were themselves. about a third of the letters reached their destination after an average of only 6 mailings. What was surprising was that when all those chains of people were analyzed, Milgram found that a majority of the letters passed through the hands of the same 3 Nebraskans. The finding drives home the point that if you want access to the social power of acquaintances, it helps to know a few superconnectors. Connectors can be found in every imaginable profession, but I'm going to focus on 7 professions where they most commonly congregate. Each of these kinds of connectors provides me with a link to an entire world of people, ideas, and information that, in a very significant way, has made my own life a little more fun, helped my career along, or made the businesses I worked for more successful. Restaurateur's 57th Street isn't exactly lower Manhattan, but it was downtown to Jimmy Rodriguez, the nightlife impresario who made the Bronx hip for the A-list with his first eatery. Jimmy's Downtown, his second restaurant, lured the same set of celebrities, politicians, and athletes looking for good food and good times. When I was in New York, it was my spot. The scene was exclusive without being pompous. Soft light, a gleaming onyx bar, and a pumping R&B soundtrack makes the place feel like a hip country club. Jimmy would fly around tables, hooking you up with free appetizers and introducing you to people he thought you might want to meet. It was like a private club, without membership dues. My memories of Jimmy were of a true blue connector. In fact, it's a requisite for most people who own restaurants. When I was in Chicago, it was Gordon's Restaurant, and in LA, it is Wolfgang Puck. The success of their enterprise depends on a core group of regulars who see the restaurant as a home away from home. And it's quite easy to get to know a restaurateur. The smart ones will go out of their way to make your experience delightful. All you have to do is reach out and go there often enough. When in a new city, I generally ask people to give me a list of a few of the hottest restaurants. I like to call ahead and ask to speak with the owner and tell them that I go out regularly, sometimes in large parties, and I'm looking for a new place to entertain. A lot. If you don't go out as often as I do, find 1 or 2 restaurants that you enjoy and frequent them when you do go out. Become a regular. Make a point of meeting the staff. When you're entertaining for work, bring others there. When you have to cater an event, use them. Once you get to know the owner, it'll become like your very own restaurant, a place that has the patina of exclusivity and cachet a private club imparts with all the warmth and comfort of your own home. With some advanced planning and a little loyalty, a restaurateur will not only share the bounty of his kitchen with you, but introduce you to his other roster of clients as well. Headhunters recruiters, job placement counselors, search executives. They are like gatekeepers. Instead of answering to one executive, however, the really successful ones may answer to hundreds of executives in the field in which they recruit. Headhunters are professional matchmakers, earning their wage by introducing job candidates to companies that are hiring. Should you get the job, the headhunter gets a sizable commission, typically a percentage of the successful candidate's first year's compensation. As a result, headhunters are an interesting blend of salesman and socialite. To find candidates, headhunters often place job ads. They also contact likely candidates directly, perhaps on the referral of a friend or colleague. In the industries in which they specialize, they become invaluable resources of names and information. The sweet spot for a headhunter revolves around 2 issues. You're either hiring them to do a search, or you're helping them do a search on behalf of someone else. If you're in the market for a job, let as many search firms as are willing hit the phones for you. I keep a file of headhunters, who they are and what they're looking for. And I return every call from them, helping to tap my network to find people for their jobs. I know they'll help me with access to some of their clients when I need their help. After all, they are in the networking business. Can anyone contact a headhunter? To be honest, headhunters prefer to be the one contacting you. But if you're careful about not trying to sell yourself before you offer up the network of contacts you can provide to them, they'll be receptive. In the early years of my career, when I was not in the position of hiring them and didn't know people who were using search consultants, I would ask pointedly, "What searches are you working on? How can I help you find people?" The other advice in this area is to act as a pseudo headhunter yourself, always on the lookout to connect job hunters and job seekers, or consultants and companies. When you help people land a new gig, they'll be inclined to remember you if they hear of a new position opening. Moreover, if you help, say, a vendor of yours land a new client, they'll usually be more open to negotiating prices on your next project. Helping others find good employees is a real currency. 3. Lobbyists. Well informed, persuasive, and self confident, lobbyists are generally impressive networkers. By virtue of their job, they are intimately familiar with the ways of large organizations and how local and national government work. They are almost uniformly passionate people whose goal is to sway politicians to vote on legislation in a way that favors the interest they represent. How do they work? Lobbyists will often host cocktail parties and dinner get togethers, allowing them to interact with politicians and their opponents in a casual atmosphere. Their more grassroots efforts involve long hours spent on the phone and in writing letters, trying to rouse the community to get involved behind an issue, all of which makes them a rather easy group to please. Can you hold an event for them? Volunteer your services? Refer other volunteers to their cause? Introduce them to potential clients? Lobbyists tend to bump up against a lot of people who it might be helpful to know, including those who are powerful and successful. 4. Fundraisers. Follow the money are words fundraisers live by. They know where it is, what it will take to get it, and most important, who's most likely to give it away. As a result, fundraisers, whether they work for a political organization, university, or nonprofit group, tend to know absolutely everybody. And while they have the unenviable job of trying to convince people every day to part with their well-earned money, they are almost always incredibly well-liked. It's a selfless job often done for the best of reasons, and most people recognize that anyone who has a good friend who is a fundraiser has an open door to a whole new world of contacts and opportunities. Number 5. Public relations people. PR people spend their whole day calling, cajoling, pressuring, and begging journalists to cover their clients. The relationship between media and PR is an uneasy one, but at the end of the day, necessity brings them together like long-lost cousins. A good friend who works in PR can be your entree into the world of media and sometimes celebrity. Alana Weiss, who co-leads the PR firm I used called the Rose Group, introduced me to Ariana Huffington, the noted author and political columnist. Ariana has since become a friend and confidant and one of the dazzling lights at my dinner parties in LA. 6. Politicians. Politicians at every level are inveterate networkers. They have to be. They shake hands, kiss babies, give speeches, and go to dinners, all in the name of gaining the trust of enough people to get elected. The stature of politicians is derived from their political power rather than their wealth. Anything you can do to help them gain power with voters or exercise power in office will go a long way to ensuring you a place in their inner circle. What can a politician do for you? Local city hall politicians can be key to working through the thicket of local governmental bureaucracy. And politicians at any level, if successful, are celebrities, and their networks reflect that. How can you reach out? Join your local chamber of commerce. Local executives, business people, and entrepreneurs generally populate the chamber. In every community, there are plenty of young politicos looking to climb the political ladder. Early on, before their rise to prominence, you can engender a lot of loyalty and trust by supporting their goals and chipping in when they decide to run for office. 7. Journalists. Journalists are powerful, needy, and relatively unknown. For years, since I was back at Deloitte, I've called on journalists at different magazines, taking them to dinners and pumping them full of good story ideas. I now know people in top positions at almost every major business magazine in the country, which is one of the reasons why in less than a year after I took over Yaya, with barely a shred of revenue to its name, the company and, more important, the idea Yaya was trying to sell, appeared in publications like Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, CNBC, Brandweek, Newsweek, The New York Times. The list goes on. These are 7 different professions tailor-made for superconnectors. Reach out to some. And there are others, lawyers, brokers, etc. Become a part of their network and have them become a part of yours. Cut the umbilical cord to the folks around the office water cooler. Mix it up. Hunt out people who look and act and sound nothing like you do. Seek out ideas from people you don't ordinarily talk to who inhabit professional worlds you don't ordinarily travel in. In one word, connect. Or better words, connect with the connectors. Connectors Hall of Fame Profile. Paul Revere, 1734 to 1818. Understanding Paul Revere's legacy to the world of networking is as simple as grasping the following. Some people are much more well connected than others. If you moved to a small town and wished for some reason to meet everyone in town, what would you do? Go door to door, greeting one resident at a time? Or would you try to find one plugged in resident who could open all the doors for you? The answer is clear. Today, that plugged in townie might be, say, the high school principal, the Little League commissioner, or the church pastor. But in Paul Revere's day, think of the 1770s in the Boston metro area. The most plugged in people were like Revere, the owner of a silversmith shop in the city's North End. Businessmen and merchants who dealt with individuals at every level of Boston society and culture. Revere was also an extremely social individual. He formed several clubs of his own and joined many others. As a teenager, he and 6 friends formed a society of church bell ringers. As an adult, he joined the North Caucus Club, a society founded by Samuel Adams's father to choose candidates for local government. In 1774, when British troops began to seize munitions, Revere formed yet another club of sorts, responsible for monitoring the movements of British troops. In addition, Revere belonged to the Masonic Lodge of St. Andrew, through which he was friendly with revolutionary activists such as James Otis and Dr. Joseph Warren. All of which helps to explain why Revere, among all Bostonians in the year preceding the Revolution, served as courier for the Boston Committee of Correspondence and the Massachusetts Committee of Safety, riding express to the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. It was also he who spread the word of the Boston Tea Party to New York and Philadelphia. Revere, in short, was a man who knew not only people, he knew gossip, he knew rumors, he knew news, and he knew it from every level of Boston society. In April 1775, Revere caught wind of British orders to capture rebel leaders and forcibly disarm the colonists. So Revere and his fellow rebels devised a warning system. 2 lanterns shining from the steeple of Boston's Old North Church indicated that the British troops were advancing on Boston by sea. 1 candle indicated a land advance. Either way, the rebels in Boston and its surrounding suburbs would know when and where to flee and take up arms. We all know the 1 if by land, 2 if by sea part of this story. What's less known is that Revere's networking savvy is what allowed him, and maybe only him, to be the one entrusted with illuminating the church steeple. The church, as it happened, was Anglican. The rector strongly supported the crown. But Revere knew the vestryman, John Pulling, through the North Caucus Club, and through his shop he knew the sexton, Robert Newman, who had a key to the building. Revere's connections were crucial to him that fateful night. After lighting the lanterns, Revere needed to reach Lexington to warn rebel leaders Sam Adams and John Hancock. First, 2 acquaintances rode Revere across the Charles River to Charlestown. There, a horse was waiting for Revere, lent to him by another pal, Deacon John Larkin. Chased by redcoats, Revere was diverted north of Lexington to the town of Medford. Because he knew the head of Medford's military, Revere rode to his house and warned him. With the militiamen's help, Revere alerted the town of Medford before heading to Lexington. Most of us know the Lexington part of the story. Less known is that on the same night that Revere made his midnight ride, a man named William Dawes went galloping off in the other direction to muster the militias to the west of Boston. Revere's ride stirred up an army, while something like 3 people showed up from the towns Dawes visited. Why? Revere was a connector. He knew everybody, and so was able to storm into one village after another, banging on all the right doors and calling out all the right people by name. Historians say Revere was blessed with an uncanny genius for being at the center of events. But it doesn't take genius for that. Just involvement and active interest in your community, and a friendship with a connector. Guys, let me just take a small moment of your precious time just to remind you to like these videos if you have watched it this far. It's very hard for me to keep reading, and your support will be very appreciating for me. Chapter 16: Expanding Your Circle. The most efficient way to enlarge and tap the full potential of your circle of friends is quite simply to connect your circle with someone else's. I don't think of a network of people as a net into which you wrangle contacts like a school of struggling cod. Again, it's like the internet, an interconnecting series of links in which each link works collaboratively to strengthen and expand the overall community. Such collaboration means seeing each person in your network as a partner, like a business in which co founders take responsibility for different parts of the company. Networking partners help each other, and by extension, their respective networks, by taking responsibility for that part of the web that is theirs and providing access to it as needed. In other words, they exchange networks. The boundaries of any network are fluid and constantly open. Let me give you an example of what I mean from my own life. One Saturday afternoon, I went to join my friend Tad and his wife Caroline at the Hotel Bel Air in Los Angeles. Tad introduced me to Lisa, the manager of the hotel, who cuts a striking pose. Tall, blonde, articulate, charming, and casual, all at the same time. If between the two of you there's someone in LA you don't know, I'll be very surprised, Tad told us. In his eyes, we were both master networkers. Lisa was, as many in the hospitality business are, a super connector. Within 10 minutes of meeting each other, we knew we were going to be great friends. Lisa and I spoke the same language. Lisa had heard about the dinner parties I regularly threw for business. Your guests should be staying at the Bel Air during their LA jaunts, she told me. I, in turn, looked around the Bel Air and thought how memorable it would be to hold some of my events in such swanky surroundings. Could Lisa and I form a social partnership? So I made a simple suggestion. Lisa, let's share a few months of dinner parties. You hold a dinner party at the Bel Air and give me half the invite list. Then I'll hold one of my dinner parties and give you half of the list. We'll split the tab for each event, saving each of us a bundle of money, and together we'll meet a lot of new, exciting people. By co-hosting the events, we'll make them that much more successful. Lisa agreed, and our dinner parties were a huge success. The unique mix of people from the worlds of business and entertainment was fun and interesting. Not only did we introduce our friends to an entirely new group of people, but the dynamic at the parties was exhilarating. Politicians, the inveterate masters of networking, have exchanged their networks in this fashion for years. They have what are called host committees, groups of people hailing from different social worlds who are loyal to a specific politician and charged with introducing their candidate to their respective circle of friends. A typical well-established politician will have a host committee of doctors, lawyers, insurance professionals, college kids, and so on. Each committee is made up of well-connected people in their respective worlds who organize parties and events, granting the politician access to all their friends. To my mind, it offers a great template for people looking to expand their own network. Are there worlds you want more access to? If so, see if you can find a central figure within that world to act as your own one-person host committee. In a business context, say you plan on selling a new product that your company is introducing several months down the line, and most of your customers will be lawyers. Go to your personal lawyer, tell him about the product, and ask him or her if they'd be willing to come to a dinner with a few of their lawyer friends that you'd like to host. Tell them that not only will they get an early look at this fabulous new product, but they'll have an opportunity to meet your friends, who could become potential clients. They'll become responsible for holding events that will usher you into their group of friends. You'll become responsible for doing the same for them. This is exactly what I am doing at Farazi Greenlight Training and Development as we roll out our training course, Relationships for Revenue Growth, into the legal profession. This training and development has been successfully taught at consulting firms, financial services companies, and to software sales forces and many others. But who better to capitalize from relationship selling but lawyers? So I made this kind of partnering works wonderfully. But the underlying dynamic at work has to be mutual benefit. It should be a win-win for all involved. If you are sharing someone else's circle of friends, be sure that you adequately acknowledge the person who ushered you into this new world and do so in all the subsequent connections that they helped foster. Never forget the person who brought you to the dance. I once mistakenly invited a brand new friend to a party without inviting the person who introduced us. It was a terrible mistake and an unfortunate lapse in judgment on my part. Is integral to an exchange of networks that demands treating the other person's contacts with the utmost respect. As your community grows, partnering becomes more of a necessity. It becomes a matter of efficiency. One contact holds the key to maintaining all the other relationships in his or her network. He or she is the gatekeeper to a whole new world. You can meet dozens, even hundreds of other people through your relationship with one other key connector. 2 quick rules of thumb. 1. You and the person you are sharing contacts with must be equal partners that give as much as they get. 2. You must be able to trust your partners because, after all, your vouching for them and their behavior with your network is a reflection on you. A word of caution: never give any one person complete access to your entire list of contacts. This is not a free-for-all. You should be aware of who in your network is interested in being contacted and how. Exchanging contacts should take place around specific events, functions, or causes. Consider carefully how your partner wants to use your network and how you expect to use his. In this way, you'll be more helpful to the other person, which is the kind of genuine reciprocity that makes partnering and the world work. So let's end this video here. In our next video, we will continue reading from the chapter 17. Soon we will complete these book guides, and do let me know in the comments which book reading you want from me. Also, I will love to see some sweet likes down there. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.